members for their upcoming questions. Members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we would ask that witnesses respond in writing pursuant to Committee Rule 7D. The hearing record will be open for 10 days. Without objection, we will get into the questions. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. I'll start with Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown, it sounds like there is 0.000% chance of a terror attack happening, even though we have 382 people who have entered. So when talking about base rates, I think it's also important to talk about the fact that we had 11 people that matched the terror watch list between 2017 and 2020, and now we have 382. From your time working as a military advisor in DHS to now, what has changed in this period of time to cause the massive increase? And that's just the ones that we know about.
Mr. Congressman, in my opinion, it is the change of policy that has emboldened the terrorists to come to our borders more so than they ever have before. While I was serving in the administration, there was this consolidated effort, not only with action on the ground, but most importantly with policies at the federal level to ensure that we took great steps to close our border and discourage folks from entering illegally. This has nothing to do with legal immigration. It's all about the illegal entry. And there was a clear message sent that that was not going to be tolerated. Since the administration change, there has been a clear message sent to include day one of the current administration that those policies were no longer going to be enforced and that it was a much more open society. I know that in my very first town hall with the now Secretary of Homeland Security, I asked the question, what has changed since the election in November to January of 2021? Because the numbers on our border had increased so dramatically. And the response was, well, there are situations in their home countries. So then I asked again more specifically, what specifically has changed? Because from my analysis, there's nothing has changed so dramatically over the last 4 months in any of the nations of which we had our illegal aliens entering, other than the change of administration here in the United States. My question was removed from the chat, even though I put it in twice, and it was refused to be answered. So in my opinion, it's the pull factors and the attitude of the administration.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Mr. Healy, I'll go to you. One of the issues that we found on our congressional travel to North Africa and the Middle East was the use of private air charters as a way for terror cells and organized criminal organizations to bring people to either South America or Central America that have now made their way into the United States. Can you talk about your experiences investigating this and shed some light on what is happening and how they're getting into through the southwest border into this country?
I have to agree with Dr. Brown. I'm a numbers person, and I'm concerned about numbers. I'm concerned about one terrorist threat and one terrorist. And I worked as an undercover FBI agent and spent several months with a domestic terrorist group, the Montana Freemen, and lived with them for several months. What you're dealing with, whether you're talking about percentages and numbers, is that there's a difference with a terrorist threat and terrorist action. I investigated hundreds of bank robberies and no one cared. But when one terrorist like Faisal Shahzad tries to blow up a bomb at Times Square, everything changes. So it's not a question of, for me, it's always been a question of numbers. And the issue is that, you know, everything seemed to be working 4 or 5 years ago, and they shut the border down. And I talked to friends at the terror screening center. They said the numbers were workable, and we could screen it. The whole process with the terror screening center and with the Border Patrol is we have to have the opportunity and the time to sit down and talk to these individuals and identify who they are and how they work against the U.S.
Let me ask another question. Are you worried about a terrorist attack in this country because of the open border policies and 382 plus people that match the terror watch list?
When I was the director of the terror screening center, I was concerned about encounters of people that we didn't know were in the U.S. and I identified specifically encounters with law enforcement officers and if we had open cases on them. Typically, we'd have 1 per month. That 1 per month that we had for 12, I lost sleep over until an FBI agent initiated a case to work it so that somebody was watching this individual and making sure that he was not going to do a terrorist act. So yes, when the numbers go from 14 to 380, that's not manageable. When the numbers go from 2 million gotaways, and the gotaways primarily are looking for, I don't want to be seen, yes. So I am concerned at the state of the U.S. right now.
Thank you. My time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa.
Thank you again to our